Claire was 22 when she first moved into the house on Ashwood Lane. She wasn't searching for luxury. She wasn't searching for beauty. All she needed was a roof over her head, something cheap, something close to her new job in the town library. The landlord showed her the property in a hurry. He spoke little, almost as if he didn't want to linger inside for too long. The house was old. Not charmingly old like a countryside cottage, but strangely crooked. The walls leaned ever so slightly to one side, the floors groaned with every step, and the air felt heavier inside than it did out on the porch. It was the kind of house that looked normal enough during the day, but once you stepped in, a small weight pressed against your chest, like the rooms themselves were holding their breath. Claire, being practical and with little money to spend, ignored the unease. The rent was half of anything else she had found. She told herself she could handle a few creaky floors and odd smells. But what she didn't know was that the house was not empty. It was never empty. From the very first moment she placed her bags down on the crooked floorboards, something was already watching. The first few days were quiet. Claire unpacked, cleaned the dust, and tried to settle in. But there was something about the silence in the house that wasn't quite right. It wasn't peaceful silence. It was the kind that pressed into her ears, the kind that made her aware of every tiny sound. At night, she began hearing faint footsteps in the hallway outside her bedroom. Slow, deliberate steps, as if someone was pacing. Whenever she opened the door, the hallway was empty, but the wooden floor still trembled slightly under her bare feet, as though someone had just walked their seconds before. The lights flickered too, not constantly, but just enough to be noticeable. Once, while reading on the couch, the lamp beside her dimmed so low she thought it would go out, and in that brief dimness, she could swear she saw a shadow move across the opposite wall. But when the bulb brightened again, there was nothing. She laughed it off to herself, chalking it up to her imagination, to stress, to being alone in a new place. But deep down, she knew. The house had eyes. It was on the fourth night that things changed. Claire was lying in bed, half asleep, when she felt something stir in the air. Her eyes opened, and she saw that the old mirror in the corner of her room was faintly glowing. It was strange, no light source in the room could have caused it. She sat up slowly, heart pounding, and stared at the mirror. At first, she saw only her reflection, pale and sleepy. But then, behind her image, another figure appeared. It was tall, darker than the room itself, with shoulders hunched and a head that tilted unnaturally to one side. Her throat tightened. She whipped around, staring into the darkness of her bedroom. Nothing. Just the shape of her furniture, the faint outline of the window. Slowly, her eyes turned back to the mirror. The figure was gone. For the rest of the night, she didn't close her eyes once. Every creak in the floorboards, every hum of the pipes, every whisper of the wind pressed against her nerves like fingernails on glass. The next day, while at the library, Claire casually mentioned the house to one of her co-workers, an older woman named Mrs. Reed. The moment Claire said, "Ashwood Lane," the woman's face paled. "You live there?" Mrs. Reed whispered. "That house has a history." Claire leaned in, curious. The woman told her that years ago, a family lived in that very house. A man, his wife, and 2 young children. One evening, they all vanished without explanation. The doors were locked from the inside, meals half-eaten on the table, beds unmade as if someone had been lying in them moments before. No bodies were ever found. Some say the family was murdered and their spirits never left. Others claim the house itself swallowed them. Neighbors swore they sometimes saw faces in the windows long after the place had been abandoned. "You should move," Mrs. Reed said firmly, gripping Claire's hand. "That house doesn't just hold memories. It watches." Claire laughed nervously, trying to shake off the chill crawling up her spine. She told herself it was just an old ghost story. But the word "watches" echoed in her mind all the way home. A week later, while cleaning the basement, Claire discovered a door she hadn't noticed before. It was small, tucked into the farthest corner behind stacks of old crates. The wood was darker than the rest of the house, almost black, and a heavy iron lock sealed it shut. That night, just past midnight, Claire was startled awake by a sound. A faint, rhythmic knocking. It seemed to come from the basement. She held her breath, listening. The knocking grew louder, more insistent, as if fists were pounding against wood. And then she heard it, a voice, soft and childlike, drifting up from beneath the floorboards. "Please, let us out." Her skin turned cold. She grabbed her phone, ready to call the landlord, but the knocking stopped. The house fell silent again, leaving only the sound of her racing heartbeat. The next morning, when she checked the basement, the door was quiet, the air still. But when she pressed her ear against the wood, she could swear she heard breathing on the other side. Over the following nights, the house became bolder. Doors would lock by themselves. Windows slammed shut even when the air was still. The clock on her nightstand froze at exactly 3:17 a.m. every night, the same time she always woke up to whispers. Her phone began glitching. Every time she tried to call someone, the screen filled with static before shutting off completely. When she played back her voicemail, she didn't hear her friends' voices. Instead, she heard distorted breathing and the faint words, "We see you." Sleep became impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she dreamed of the locked basement door, of small pale hands pushing out from the cracks, of hollow eyes watching her from the shadows. She stopped eating properly. Her skin grew pale. The house wasn't just haunting her, it was draining her. One night, after hours of tossing and turning, Claire sat up and faced the mirror in her room. She told herself she had to confront it, whatever it was. At first, her reflection looked normal. She forced herself to stare, unblinking. Minutes passed. And then, it changed. Her reflection tilted its head, slowly, unnaturally, just like the dark figure she had seen before. Its lips curled into a smile, but Claire's own face remained frozen in fear. The reflection leaned closer to the glass and whispered, though its lips barely moved. "You don't belong out there. You belong in here." Claire stumbled back, knocking over the lamp, heart hammering against her ribs. But when she looked again, the mirror was normal. Just her terrified face staring back. That night, the whispering voices didn't stop. They followed her through the house, calling her name, coaxing her toward the basement. On her last night in the house, Claire packed her bags. She decided she would leave at sunrise, no matter what. She didn't care if she lost her deposit or her job. She needed to escape. But at 3:17 a.m., as if on cue, the house came alive. The lights flickered violently, the walls groaned, and the mirror shattered with a deafening crack. The locked basement door banged open, and the sound of footsteps flooded the house, many footsteps, rushing up the stairs. Claire screamed, grabbing her suitcase, but when she tried to open the front door, the handle twisted uselessly in her hands. The wood stretched and warped, sealing itself shut. From the hallway, she saw them. Pale figures, hollow-eyed, children and adults alike, crawling out of the darkness. Their mouths opened, whispering in unison. The last thing Claire felt was cold hands dragging her backward, pulling her into the darkness, as her own voice joined the chorus of whispers. The next morning, the landlord unlocked the door to check on the tenant. The house was silent. Claire's belongings were gone. No suitcase, no clothes, no trace of anyone ever living there. He sighed heavily, as if he had seen this many times before. As he turned to leave, he glanced at the shattered mirror in the bedroom. For a moment, he thought he saw a pale young woman staring back at him, her eyes wide, her mouth silently moving. He quickly shut the door, locked it, and placed a new, "For rent," sign outside. The rent would always stay cheap. Someone else would always come. And the house would always watch.